Another fundamental part of these general instructions concerns the achievement and maintenance of qualifications and the recent necessary activity. We said that a license never expires, like a diploma or a degree. However, would you buy a house built by an engineer who's been doing a different job for the last 5 years? Perhaps first, he will have to do an update in his previous profession and gain some experience in a studio to become familiar with the subject again. The same thing goes for pilots. Once a license is obtained, a pilot can, hypothetically, remain on the ground for a certain number of years. So what must he do in order to get back to flying? He will have to go back to a flight school and, depending on the vehicle he wants to fly, how long he hasn't been flying for, and his experience, the school will determine a training program to get him back to being able to fly. First of all, let's distinguish what a type and a class are. An aircraft type is a specific model for which it is necessary to obtain certification. Regarding helicopter types, for example, you cannot switch from one to another unless a specific course is undertaken. Airplanes, on the other hand, up to a certain tonnage, can fall instead into classes, such as the SEP or single-engine pistons, or the MEP, multi-engine pistons, and SET, that is to say, the single-turbine engines. Then when you get to the MET or multi-engine turbine, even the planes practically become all types. The airliners are all METs, in fact each has its own specific type rating, Airbus 320, Boeing 737, etc. It's a bit complex, but by making a scheme or chart you can find logical synthesis. Class ratings last 2 years, and there are 2 ways to renew them. By having done at least 12 hours of flight in the last 12 months of validity, one of which must be with the instructor, hypothetically the first year you can never fly, or if the minimum required activity has not been carried out, a check with an examiner, a CRE, class rating examiner, can be carried out before this deadline, and in this way you will be able to maintain the currency of the license for another 2 years. Type ratings, on the other hand, last only 1 year, and there is only one way to renew them, by having flown at least 2 hours of flight in the last 12 months, one of which must contain a check by a TRE examiner, type rating examiner. These requirements are not particularly precautionary because to continue to maintain manual skills on an aircraft, especially if it's a helicopter, it will be necessary to fly at least once a month, and could even be less than an hour. Say, half an hour for example. Half an hour should be sufficient to follow all the switching on and off procedures, refresh the radio telephony, and perform some maneuvers. So, if a person wants to keep the validity of the license, he can undertake just 2 hours, assuming he has to pass the check and therefore the manual skills he requires to maintain it. But if a pilot always wants to be active, he will have to do at least 5 or 6 hours per year for each type, for which he must have obtained the qualification. As a pilot gains experience, a few hundred hours of flight, there will be less and less effort required in order to maintain manual skills. Remember that in order to bring passengers on board, both as a private individual and in commercial operations, it is necessary to have performed a recent flight, at least 3 takeoffs and 3 landings in the last 90 days. Some schools or clubs rightly claim at least 1 flight a month, after which it is necessary to take a refresher flight with an instructor. Do not complain if they ask you to fly with the instructor. They do it purely for your safety and not to gain the small amount of extra costs. If the license has expired, we have said that there are some evaluation parameters to bring it into validity. What type of aircraft is it? How long has the license expired? And how much experience does the pilot have on that type of vehicle? And the school applies a renewal program which will include a certain number of theory hours in the classroom, flight hours, and a final check. After 3 years, however, the type rating has expired definitively and you will have to redo the whole course as if you'd never undertaken it. Unless there is some kind of credit for the flight experience, which in this case must be a significant amount, or for the similarity with another type with which you are currently rated. Within the types or classes, there are families or different variants between one model and another, for which a minimum of additional training will be required. For the SEP class, you will have to do a familiarization to pass from Cessna 172 to Piper PA-28. For the types instead, you will have to do a training by difference, to switch, for example, from the Boeing 737-400 to the Boeing 737-800, or, in the case of helicopters, from the AW109 power to the AW109 SP. Let's go no further in this specification, as for the moment you don't need it. You will learn the details of these peculiarities during your training. Another qualification that can be obtained, in addition to the instrumental rating that we've already talked about in previous tutorials, is the flight instructor rating, which can be obtained by a commercial pilot or even by a private pilot, within certain limitations of course, who have achieved a certain level of flying experience. The theoretical course will cover aeronautical regulations, teaching techniques, and a very important part regarding human factors, which is the subject that you hear about in many working environments and concerns the psychological aspects of man-to-man and man-to-machine relationships. Specifically within this course, the student's management and the subjective instructional approach are explained and must be calibrated according to the student attending the course. Depending on the experience, ratings, and qualifications, an instructor can teach PPL and CPL students, or only for specific qualifications, i.e. instrumental ratings or MCC courses. In summary, the qualification checklist for flying is as follows: medical certificate, license for the type of flight you wish to undertake, private or professional, currency of the type or class rating, familiarization or type differences, qualification for the activity you will carry out, IFR flights, training flights, etc., and recent activity. If you have all these valid requirements, then you can take off safely. If you have any questions or curiosities, contact us at info@checkbeforeflight.com or refer to the definitions in Wiki Before Flight. Happy landings!